All right, welcome into Starting Nine here on the Five Reasons YouTube channel. I'm Ethan Skolnick. Producer today is Manny Chang. Thanks for joining. We'll be here a couple times a week here going forward, talking Heat, talking about the other teams in town. I do want to mention our sponsors before we start. We always mention Prize Picks. Use that code 5 FIVE. Get your initial deposit matched up to $100. Got lots of people playing lately. We know obviously the NBA is going to be on hiatus, except for the All-Star game coming up this weekend. But you can play the All-Star game. You can play the other sports as well. You can play MMA. When baseball comes back, you can play that. You can play NHL. Go to Prize Picks, Google Play Store, Apple App Store, prizepicks.com. But make sure you use the code 5 FIVE to get to that initial deposit match up to $100. Also want to mention our friend Danny over at All Pro Construction Builders. You can find them right now on Instagram at All Pro Construction Builders. This is where you want to go if you need those impact windows and doors, which you do need. We are in hurricane season, always in South Florida, it seems like. I know we're a few months away, but get ready for it. So go to All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram. Check them out. Phone number for Danny is 305-484-3429. There it is. All Pro Construction. Oh, there it was. I think there it was. Didn't come up. All Pro Construction Builders, 305-484-4429. It's loading. There you go. Just check them out there. And again, they handle residential and commercial properties, state certified licensed and insured general contractor. They service Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties. Only locally made products, American made. Danny's a huge Heat fan as well, and he's probably checking out Starting Nine right now. So reach out to him. This is the place that you go for the impact windows and doors. And in South Florida, you absolutely need them. Feels like we dodged a bullet for a long time. All right, going to get into the latest news that popped overnight. Shams tweeted out that Kevin Love was working towards a buyout with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kind of sense that this was happening. He's been out of the rotation there in Cleveland. He was getting minutes. I'm going to go through some of his stats as we go forward here. He was getting minutes earlier in the season. That kind of stopped. He's played 41 games. He started 3 games. Of course, they have Mobley and Allen up front. And we have been talking about how the Heat are sort of waiting for all the buyout candidates to emerge. And so Heat fans are panicking. I mean, there's reason to panic, obviously, with nothing happening at the deadline, and then what we saw last night, which was an abomination. If you want to check out 5 on the floor, I think Mikal Bridges just scored again. So 5 on the floor, we covered all that last night, and obviously the Heat are limping into the All-Star break. It's not been a successful first half of the season. I don't know how you characterize it any other way. They were first last year. Now they're 7th. They're not that far out of 4th, but they've had opportunities over the past couple of weeks to make up that ground. And they haven't, and they lost to a team yesterday that has some nice players on it. I like a lot of what Brooklyn did at the trade deadline, but there's no Durant, there's no Irving, there's no excuse. I'm sorry. There's just not. I don't care if Tyler's not playing. I don't care if you're playing G League. Guys, this is how your roster is constructed. You got Jimmy and Bam. You got to figure out a way to win that game. Jimmy was already wherever the heck he's going for All-Star weekend because he does not want to be in Utah. I know that. He was already there last night. That was a bad Jimmy Butler performance last night. So we will get to some of the comments. We appreciate them. Be nothing to lose if we take them both. So that's what we're going to discuss today, okay? Let's start with Kevin Love. The Heat have always liked Kevin Love. We know that. I covered Kevin for 1 year in Cleveland, and I didn't come away especially impressed, even though he was closer to his prime at that point. I think because I was comparing him to Chris Bosh, who I had covered in Miami, and I just never felt that Kevin Love was as well-rounded a player as Chris was, and I felt that he got sort of outsized attention for big numbers when the big numbers weren't really needed. And he didn't make some of the sacrifices early in his Cleveland career that Bosh made in Miami. And so I guess I got caught up in that a little bit. And look, Kevin's had a great career. It's a borderline Hall of Fame career if you look at the numbers. He has done some things over the past couple of years in Cleveland, where he should express frustration publicly that I thought he's gotten kind of away with it. And then lately, I feel like he's handled the role and everything a little bit better. But the Heat have always liked Kevin Love. I mean, there's no question. Eric Spoelstra in particular really likes his skill set. A big man who can pass. I know that nobody thinks Eric likes big men. But a big man that can pass, and this comes in from CB0. Let's get K-Love. I think he fits in Spo's system like Bosh. Exactly. A big man with those kind of skills, Eric will find a way to use him. Kevin can still rebound. He was never a great leaper to begin with, but he's averaging, I'm looking at this right now, 6.8 rebounds in 20 minutes a game. So extrapolate to 36 minutes. He's still averaging about 11, 12 rebounds per 36 minutes, which is very, very healthy. He's never been a shot blocker, so that's not the case here. I'm looking at the side here because I'm looking at the stats. And even this year, where his 3-point shooting was down, he's shot almost 30. He shot 35.5% from three on 4.5 attempts. Last year, he shot 39% from three. Some of those games were against Miami. 37%, 37%, 36%, 42% from three over the previous years. So he still can shoot the three. This team needs 3-point shooting. He instantly would be a top 3-point shooter on this team. And, at this point, you would hope that he's accepted whatever his role is going to be in Miami or somewhere else. So, this year, again, played 20 minutes a game. Last year, 22 and a half. The year before, 25. So somewhere around 20 minutes, I think you can slot him in. And as people are saying, if you take a look at what the Heat have right now, there certainly does seem to be room for another player who knows how to play. Now, the comparison, before we get to the Westbrook piece of this, the comparison here that should be made is to Serge Ibaka, really, because those are really the only two bigs that have kind of popped out there on the market. And both of them have pedigrees. Both of them have played in finals. Love has won a championship. Both of them have been all-stars. Ibaka was an all-star one year, I believe. And so I understand, why there would be some interest in Ibaka. He's a better shot blocker than Love. He's always relied more on athleticism than Love has, although he's a pretty good mid-range shooter. Love will stretch you out to the three. Ibaka has done that in the past. That's kind of where your preference lies. Is it one or the other? But they do need one, I believe. But they also need playmaking at the guard position. And so this is where the Westbrook thing becomes interesting. The Heat have about $5 million to spend. Kevin Love and Russell Westbrook have always had a good relationship. It goes all the way back to UCLA. You can find plenty on it. Kevin has defended Russ at times when Russ has gotten a lot of criticism. There is a kinship there between the two of them. They share an agent. As Greg Sylvander mentioned on our Off the Floor feed today, there are other Heat players, including Oladipo, Hero, and Jovic, who have that same agency. So there is a relationship there with the Heat that already exists. That makes it easier when you're trying to fit two players in. Westbrook does not have a buyout yet. That's the difference. Well, Love doesn't either, but at least they're working on one. There's no word yet that Westbrook is actually working on one with Utah or that he wants to. And you can make the case, if you're Russell Westbrook, that it makes sense to just take all your money and try to make a playoff push in the Western Conference because all those teams are all bunched up. And Utah, record-wise, even though they've slipped over the past month and a half expectedly, they're still kind of in the mix there. So you could make a case that he just stays and takes his money. So I'm doing this based on if he actually gets a buyout. If he gets a buyout, you assume he's going to get enough money that money is not going to be the big issue going forward. Kevin Love has made a ton of money in his career also. I can see it being attractive to them. I don't have any information on that specifically, but I can see it being attractive, and I can see the Heat looking at it as kind of killing two birds with one stone. And look, if you're going to make the season interesting, this would make the season interesting. The Heat are not immune to the noise that there is no noise about this team. Does that make sense? They're not immune to the fact that people are tuning out on this particular team. It's gotten stale. We are basically in the business of trying to hype them, and I am running out of things to hype. We need a week-long break to come up with some episodes. Like, we've done all of this before. There's nothing new to say about this team. They can't shoot. They defend pretty damn well. They've been okay in the clutch. Get it. This comes in. Can we get Seth Curry and Sarge? I don't know that Seth Curry is going to be available. Does not necessarily appear so. They have interest. They've had some interest in Sarge. Barry's reported that. I don't know if he can play anymore. This one comes in from Kaz. Westbrook can't shoot. I prefer Stanley Johnson. Well, Stanley Johnson hasn't been a consistently good shooter over his career either. That's improved of late. Stanley's a better defender. The Heat have liked Stanley Johnson. The Heat might have drafted Stanley Johnson if he dropped to 10 and Winslow hadn't instead of Stanley going 8th all those years ago. This comes in from Cesar. This team needs energy. Russ has a lot of energy. I do believe that Kevin Love's energy can kind of come and go. I can tell you from watching him even in his prime where he would get essentially very, very lazy defensively. They will have to cover for him defensively. He's obviously his foot speed's not even what it was before. Russ has never been the defender that he should be for his athleticism. You're just hoping to get average from him. You're hoping to get slightly below average from Kevin Love. So these are not defensive moves. These are moves to juice the locker room. These are moves to juice the environment. These are moves to juice the offense potentially, even though Westbrook can be inefficient. Obviously, this would help the rebounding. Both guys are elite rebounders for their positions, and they have been throughout their careers. So that will help. Although I don't think rebounding has been the big problem with this team that everybody thinks it has been. Shooting has been their number one problem this season. It's the number one problem. When you're trying to compliment Jimmy and Bam, and you don't have any shooting. It's a recipe for disaster, and that's why they go through all these ruts. And I will argue that that's a bigger problem than the size deficiency, even though the size deficiency hurts them because it forces guys to do things that they shouldn't have to do, and they wear down. So I understand the reason for more size. I get it. But I'm also saying that the bigger issue on this team has been shooting. Love would provide shooting, at least. He can still shoot. So how do you get this done? Well, I mean, first thing, you got to work with the agency on it. Russ has got to want the buyout, and you got to sell him on the fact that they can play together. You have a selling point there. I mean, the other conversation is maybe Kevin Love goes to the Lakers. Well, Russ ain't going back there. He can't. Right? Obviously, that didn't work out very well. So I don't expect to see Kevin Love with the Clippers. I mean, I know the Clippers are trying to be active here. But so there is an opportunity to make a sales pitch to bring both of them in. Would this satisfy Heat fans? I mean, if you look at it this way, okay, you essentially then traded Dwayne Dedmon, who was almost single-handedly bringing down your team for like a month of the season, and the second-round pick for a flyer on two guys who are likely Hall of Famers. I know everybody has, Mike Bibby, post-traumatic stress disorder. So do I. I still believe, with as badly as LeBron played in the 2011 finals, if Spo had gone to Chalmers to start that series, or even in game 2, instead of waiting until game 6, I believe the Heat win that series. I think Dwayne was good enough in that series. If he had been playing with somebody in the backcourt who wasn't shooting 22% from 3 and a complete sieve defensively, until Spo finally went to Rio, and Rio, I think, scored 22 in the last game. It wasn't enough, but I feel like if that had happened throughout the course of the series where Rio was playing those minutes, I still believe if they had never signed Mike Bibby that year and just kept it with Carlos Arroyo and then played Chalmers as a starter, I think they probably win the championship that year. But with that being said, not every guy is the same. This one comes from Quintero. Will Barton makes more sense. I also make sense. Well, from a shooting perspective, yes. Yes. I mean, if you could get Barton and Love. I don't know what Barton's looking for, Most of these guys will sign for the minimum because they're getting the majority of their money from somewhere else. It's a way to rebuild their value going into the offseason. And I can tell you that this free agent class looks like garbage again. So you have an opportunity as a player to rebuild value and possibly get a mid-level somewhere. Another comment here. As I've said, we're a bad team. Adding Westbrook and Love is nothing to lose scenario. Right. That's how Heat fans are looking at this right now. The Heat are not a bad team. The Heat are exceedingly average. I looked yesterday at after the game at the net rating, because we've been monitoring that. It is right back at 0.0. They are an average basketball team. We can talk about why and Lowry and G Leaguers playing all over the place and everything, but they are an average basketball team. They are worse than their record reflects. That's where they're at. So we'll see what happens here, but I do think it's something to monitor. I think that relationship between the two of them is something that the Heat can sell. I think that the Heat are looking for the Heat, something to sort of energize the fan base going to the second half, and then as this one comes in, those two moves would definitely satisfy me. We need shooting and playmaking. I mean, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Love at this stage of his career are probably still rotation players, right? Are we going to argue that some of the guys that are playing for the Heat are necessarily rotation players? I mean, Haywood Highsmith has done a pretty good facsimile of it this year. But if we're talking about down the stretch of a playoff game and you need a basket, you need a 3, Highsmith's defense is better, but if you need offenses, are you looking to Kevin Love or are you looking to Haywood Highsmith to make a 3 in that spot? I mean, the kid point guard that they brought up, if Lowry does not come back, okay, and serve a useful role for this team, and I've said repeatedly, I have my doubts about that. Would you rather have him or would you rather have Russ? I know Russ got benched in the playoffs in recent years, but I think it's a reasonable question to ask. Is there any adjustments you can see Spo making after the All-Star break? I think it depends a lot on his personnel, honestly. It depends also on whether Lowry comes back. And in what condition. It depends when Oladipo comes back and in what condition. We hyped Duncan Robinson last night. That didn't seem to make any difference. I think that, he's got a week and a half or a week roughly to kind of figure out how am I going to get consistency out of this group. But they need a reinforcement or two. I mean, I understand the Cleveland matchup looks better. People don't trust Philly in the playoffs. We discussed this. I don't think there's anything they can really do to get them past Milwaukee or Boston. And I talked about this on the last starting nine, barring an injury. But I feel like if they bring in a couple of guys who have pedigree at this stage and they change the dynamic in there, that maybe there's a chance that they catch lightning in a bottle. I wouldn't bet on it. As I've said before, buyout guys are buyout guys for a reason, even if they were really great players. But I'd rather see it than what I'm watching now. I've thrown my hands up on this. That game last night, Mikal Bridges is a nice player. Letting him go for 45 when your best player or one of your two best players is guarding him a lot of the time. This comes in from Splash. This isn't 2012 Russ and Love not saving the team. I don't think they're saving the team. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I would go pick them in Vegas. I'm not saying I think they're going to beat Milwaukee or Boston. I'm not saying that I guarantee they're going to win a first-round series. If they're in the play-in, I don't guarantee anything, okay? This team could absolutely lose 2 straight games in a play-in. Absolutely. Let other three-point shooters get hot. Have one of their own, 8 for 38 nights from 3. Absolutely. I'm just simply looking at the options out there. I'm saying, okay, Terrence Ross is off the board. Reggie Jackson is off the board. Will Barton, we don't really know about yet, right? Ibaka, every team's given up on him lately, and he's a good locker room guy. So it's I don't know how much is still there. Kevin Love, you can say, okay, they gave up on him, but they've moved in a different direction at this stage, okay? And they have 2 bigs who need to play a ton. And so I'm not that surprised about it that they're moving on from him and they want to do right by him and give him a place where maybe he has a better opportunity. I get it. But the Ibaka thing to me is weird, because he's been out there for the past 2 or 3 years and teams have not jumped on him or given him big roles, and then it's always seemed to sort of fizzle out. So, look, I'm okay with either, I guess, if you need to add one more big to the rotation. And obviously they've got the Orlando Robinson, contract that they've got to deal with if they want to keep him around here. But I've come around to this part of it. The Westbrook part, I have to be talked into because the inefficiency is glaring. The defense is not there for sure. But he plays hard. And I'm looking at last night, and I'm like, that didn't even look to me like a Heat team that was playing hard. Like Bam and Gabe, Max, I guess. But I don't know. They didn't look like they looked checked out to me last night. With Russ, at least, he's not going to check out, really. I mean, he doesn't want to check out to come back the game sometimes. That was an issue in Los Angeles. But he's not going to check out emotionally and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be a show one way or the other. At this point, I would kind of take a show. So it's just something we want to talk about today. Monitor it. The Love-Westbrook relationship is real. It is something that can be pitched. They have the same agency. They fill 2 needs in the rotation potentially. But Greg mentioned something on our Off the Floor chat. Do you need to offer a starting spot to one or both? Or are you keeping Caleb and Gabe in the starting lineup? I might keep Caleb and Gabe in the starting lineup, but work Love into it. I'm keeping Gabe Vincent as a starter the rest of the year. I made myself clear on that. Bring Westbrook off the bench. But then the problem becomes how Westbrook and Oladipo play together. Even though they did in OKC, from a shooting perspective, that's not a natural fit. All right, thanks everybody for joining. We'll do more of these going forward. Thanks to our producer, Manny Chang. All Pro Construction Builders, make sure you check them out. Our guy, Danny, Price Picks, use that code 5, FIVE. We will be doing another playback. We had more than 100 people on there last night. We had some fun with it. We're going to be doing another one for All-Star Sunday. So watch Bam play in the All-Star game. Maybe Tyler. We'll see what happens over the next couple of days. Again, Prize Picks, use that code 5. Have a good one, everybody.